gustas. First of all, props that you might need. So I have a rolled up blanket that's going to support me in some of the shapes, and this could also be very easily just a cushion or a pillow. So a couple of times under the thigh is where I use it, and I'll just have it handy in different places as an option. So pillow or a rolled up blanket. And then we'll use a strap. So if you don't have a strap, maybe you have a shawl or belt from your bathrobe or something like that. So we'll just do the Supta Baddha where we lie on the back and hold the leg up and move that leg around. And so something as an extension for your arms would be nice. And so I'll just have that on the side. The overall arcing theme is kind of a spring-like, so I'm feeling into the shift, the change that we can slowly start to feel in the seasons, and looking into what the wood element represents. It's this transition from a yin energy, the ultimate yin, and from water element, the energy kind of starts to rise, and the movement from the yin towards the yang. But the organ related to it would be your liver in the body, and I'm stroking the inner thighs because that's where your liver channels are running into the stomach. And then the helper of the liver would be gallbladder, so the whole lateral line in the body. So that a little bit has informed me which postures I'm taking with you today. But let's take, if it is at all comfortable, sitting on your heels to start with, because we'll kind of come into a wide knee child's pose, and you could be at the back of your mat. I'm just here so that I'm facing you. But if it's not comfortable to sit like this for about a minute and a half, then you could sit in any other way and then switch your seat. So what I thought to do to begin with is just to kind of connect to your breath for a moment. And I'll add, we did a liver point, acupressure point last time. And so I'm going to bring in a very potent kidney point at the bottom of your collarbones. So just like a groove at the top of your chest that you could hold while we do the beginning kind of centering meditation here. And what this point works with is, it is a very potent immune system point, but also for kind of anxiety and when we feel restless. So, and kidneys and water element is what feeds and fuels and supports the wood element. So we're kind of moving out of the water's domain, but to support the wood element. And you don't have to be very precise. Just poke around here at the top of your chest a little bit. And usually these acupressure points are a little bit tender. So you have your collarbone, and then I'm just sliding off the collarbone a little bit, and there's this fleshy kind of groove there. And what I'm doing is I'm doing both sides, and I'm kind of taking my 2-3 fingers and just massaging around here a little bit. So the collarbone points here and then slightly down. And as I said, you're not putting needles in, so you don't have to be precise. And the tenderness will inform you. And if it is at all comfortable to close the eyes, and you could be just having a little bit of pressure, you could be circling your fingers there, or you could be tapping. So you can just see which way of connecting to this point works. And then allow for a little bit of a longer breath to come in. So you kind of feel this area, the breath moving towards where your fingers are. So the breath expands and opens the rib cage. Maybe you even hold the breath at the top for a moment, and then letting it slowly out. And then do a couple of more like this. And what you could experiment is when on your out breath, you could open your mouth a little bit and make a shh sound. So a little bit of this detoxifying breath, which is also one of the functions of your liver, is to cleanse and detox the blood. And in your own time, one more time. And be patient with that exhale, don't rush it. And it just makes the breath longer, that sound, that sizzling sound. And don't rush it. At the bottom of your next breath, you could release your fingers if you still have them. There at the top of the chest, just place them somewhere where it's comfortable on your thighs, and take a couple of normal breaths, just noticing your internal state. What can happen very often, the liver chi stagnation is a very common thing that can happen. So again, today's practice will do both, like we'll add breath, we'll add postures that we hold, but also some movement, so that we can kind of feel where we can actually sense some parts of us being stuck, and just help a little bit for things to move, and for there to be a little bit more ease in the body. And then I'll slowly, as I said, I'll kind of travel towards a wide knee child's pose. So I'll just make a little shift by sliding the knees a little bit wider, and then walking myself forward, letting the arms relax and letting the forehead come down onto the ground. I like to rock the forehead, so a little bit from side to side, just a couple of times to massage this area and release some tension from there, from the forehead. And then letting the head be heavy. And if you need something under your head, under your forehead, like a block, then you could use that. And if you felt that the sizzling breath, that sound was that was helpful, that there's this desire to do a few more, just feel into if that was something that you enjoyed. Then you could add 1 or 2 rounds here where the breath goes out through the mouth with that little shh. I use that particularly, again, when I feel that I'm kind of holding on, whether it's holding on in my physicality or in my kind of emotional state, or mentally. There's lots of things that kind of feel sticky in my mind, which is a little bit how these days everything feels. And so if it feels useful, adding a couple of more times that breath. And these options, noticing the effect. So one of the things that the wood element is representing is having to have a direction, to have this knowing, or this sense, or this vision, which way to move, what is the best next step, or the direction you want to move towards. And we can tune ourselves into a guidance that comes from within with these little micro decisions. Like, does this breath, how does that feel? Do I continue? Do I feel when there's a natural kind of completion? So we can experiment a bit. Let's give it another minute or so here. And then take one more breath in. Let it slowly out, whether it's with the sound or simply through the nose. And then we'll transition by walking the hands just slightly back so that you can come to all fours and to start to bring your right foot to the top of the mat. So the top of your setup there onto the right side. And so we'll come to our lunges, and you could again hear that option to stay more steady in the shape or add a little bit of movement, a little bit of exploration. That exploration could be simply moving that front knee around, or moving your whole kind of pelvis and hips around a little bit. Feeling into the front of that left hip and sensation on the right side. And I leave it completely up to you how you will ration this, how will you portion for yourself the ratio between movement and stillness. In one of the practices we used a blanket roll or pillow in front of that back thigh as a way to find a gentler dragon pose, so that I can kind of drop the weight of my thigh onto that blanket. So you could at one point experiment with this. So I'm encouraging you to kind of find your own way within the framework, within the kind of the looser framework that I'm providing. So that also in life we can start to kind of sense and feel into what are the things, the actions, the directions that align or kind of make you feel aliveness or juicy, or challenge you in this moment, just the right amount. And there's an option for the last 5 breaths to add a twist. So to start to rotate your right hand can come onto your right thigh and rotate the right shoulder away from the ground. You could be with the left hand down or left elbow down. And again, that's an option. Often in springtime, the twisty practices are there to kind of help this wringing out, this cleansing as the life force kind of awakens in nature. Then for us as well, the springtime really kind of represents any times when we stepping into the unknown, which these days is all the time. It's the new normal. Give it another breath. And then we'll slowly return towards the back of the mat. So taking that right leg back. And option is to either come back to what we did, where we were, to a stillness in your child's pose. Could be knees together or knees apart. Or it could be a little bit of a kind of a flow or curling from child's pose to sit back onto the heels and rippling with the spine, so letting the chest lift and folding back. So those of you who feel a little bit sticky, then you could experiment with movement. Or like last week I mentioned, these days, for me at least, it's kind of, I feel there's a lot of kind of restlessness in my system, anxiety, and so being completely still hasn't really worked. So bringing slow movements in as a way to experience and still stay in my body and not to shut down has been a good option. So that's why I'm offering that here in case you similar. And I'll do two more. And for me, this unraveling represents a little bit this spine kind of the from the sprout, from the seed, things starting to sprout. And so that's what I'm kind of feeling in the spine and in this unwinding and rising and curling action, this cyclical nature of everything. Life and organisms moving through their cycles. And then at one point, we'll change the sides for the dragon pose. So the left leg can come to the left side of the mat. And you do not have to do the same that you did on the other side. So think of this as a new day. So even though it's the same posture, you come with your fresh perspective to feel and sense and to try different things. Stakes here are really low. So you can't really go wrong. Can I move myself? So even when I'm moving myself more towards more ease, that doesn't always mean, in our yin sense as well, it doesn't always mean that there's not a challenge there. But in each moment, I try to sense like what is the amount of discomfort that I have the capacity to hold right now. So there's no necessity, not necessary to push yourself. Life will come and push you anyhow, so we don't need to add that here right now. And can you notice the moments where maybe stillness, so for me, for example, the moments where the stillness becomes like something that I can manage this. I can hold this. And then again, for the last 5 breaths, turning it into a twist if you choose to, with the left hand coming somewhere on that left thigh, left shoulder turning away from the ground and up towards the ceiling in your own way. Good, and then let's turn back towards the ground, and as I release the left leg back, I'm going to transition all the way down onto the belly. So taking a moment of rebound here to feel the front of the hips, to let your legs flop and to relax into the shoulders, to breathe into the back body. So as I said, we'll be tending to the water element that in the body. That means turning our focus to the kidney channel. And so we'll come into a Sphinx pose slowly. Those of you who've been practicing with me, you know that I've been kind of doing lately this active Sphinx first. So if that works for you, otherwise just come to your yin Sphinx, come and bring your forearms down. If you want to give it a try, if you haven't done it before, the toes tuck under, the knees and thighs lift off the ground, the heels reach towards the back of the mat. So the backs of the legs, the quads are active, the backs of the legs are stretching. And then I'll slowly keep the toes tucked under when I come up onto the forearms. Just sense if this works for your back. So my spine has really kind of welcomed this variation. I imagine I feel the back body shortening and the kidneys right kind of nestled where your floating ribs are. So they're getting a good proper squeeze here. And of course the compression at the back of the spine. Giving it a couple of breaths. And then in your own time again, slowly you can start to let your legs melt into the ground. So it's the yin is slow, the yang is slowly transforming into a yin, this softening and melting, finding the angle for the legs, how wide you want to have them, and finding the position for your forearms and elbows. And let's use this shape also to feel the breath in the belly, or kind of that movement against the ground towards the midsection of the body, to feel your pelvis heavy. One of the things that can happen when the energy starts to rise, the chi, the movement of the wood element, is to really fast movement, upward, upward, upward. And it can create a lot of kind of mental activity. I was with my acupuncturist today, and she was really noticing that in me, a lot of kind of young energy and a lot of activation higher up. So we were already working today with needles to really kind of land back and find your roots and find your center. So see again if you can start to bring your awareness towards lower centers in the body. And then what we're going to do from here is we're going to slide the right knee up to the side. So now we are in the back bend. We stay with the kidneys, but we get that inner thigh stimulation where your liver line is as well. Well, kidney and liver lines are very close together on that inner thigh there. If you have your blanket roll, one thing that you could experiment here with is to have a blanket roll come under kind of your lower ribs. Some people like it, some don't. So it has a massaging effect there for your diaphragm, but also take some pressure away from the shoulders. And another place for the pillow or the blanket could be if you wanna have less sensation. So this is what I sometimes use more kind of in a restorative sense. So I have that blanket roll actually come under the groin area here. So a couple of uses how to take the challenge out if that's not what you particularly need in this moment. And again, finding the dropping in the bones. And then the awareness again, dropping also to those lower centers, as I said. I'm going to keep that right thigh really heavy and dropping. Now give it another breath, emptying that out. And then we'll turn this into one more shape before doing the opposite side. So I'll take the blanket and I will use that under my head. So we're taking it into what's called it's a twist, where there is an option to hold onto that back leg. So we call it the cat tail twist. I don't teach it very often, but let's see if we can get there together. So the right knee stays where it is for now, and I'll thread the left hand under. So that's where the blanket might be coming handy. And some of you might turn onto your back without grabbing that straight leg, which is your left leg. So some of you will be just happy to do a simple kind of one knee twist from here, maybe even something under that left knee. If you want to give it a try, so we did a little bit of quad and front of thigh opening in our dragons, is to bend into the left knee and take hold of that left foot so the heel comes close to your bum. And then you can play with to either stay a little bit more on your left side with the right knee on the ground. And so there's less twist happening, and you are having maybe another kind of quad stretch here. Or you start to kind of roll toward your back, which probably will mean that your right knee is going to lift off the ground. I'm not aiming for that's my right shoulder to get onto the ground, but I'm going to kind of let myself rock a little bit, right knee towards the ground, away from the ground, to kind of find that position that works in my body for this shape. Remember, your option is not to hold on to that left foot. Can you find kind of the right amount of juiciness and not forcing the shape? Play a little bit, rock a little bit, change some variables, find the support that you need. Most likely something under your head would feel good. And then we'll hold this one for another minute or so. So now adding those components. If you've got the back leg, you have the front of the thigh, you have the twist. Bring that breath to the midsection of the body. And then another breath comes in. And slowly beginning, if you have that left foot, begin to let it go. And we slide, roll, curl back onto the belly. Just taking a moment here, rocking your hips if that feels good. Just a short rebound this time. And then we'll take ourselves back to Sphinx pose. So at first, just both legs straight. You could roll your blanket up if you are going to use it, so you have that handy here. You could actually already have it under your rib cage if you want. It doesn't have to come there just when you bring the leg out to the side. As I said, I'm just giving you some options to play with. It's not absolutely necessary, the blanket roll, to be there. But it can serve, again, one thing that can help the focus to be more rooted in those lower centers in the body. And then slowly that left knee can travel up to the side, so it comes more or less to hip height. And one way you can support that hip if it feels too intense is to actually have that blanket roll instead of the rib cage. Lower ribs, have it under that groin area there, right at the grease of the thigh. And then let's settle here for a couple of minutes to let that left thigh get heavy and sink. So as the energy in the springtime really kind of wants to move and rise, if that movement is somehow kind of restricted or blocked, the emotional tone that is associated with the wood element, with this wood phase, and your liver is anger, and different shades of anger, like frustration, irritation, but also negative self-talk. So this anger also has this explosive upward movement chi, upward movement energy, and it's this natural defense mechanism. And it's useful. Especially these days, thinking of like the energy of that to stand up for injustice, to take action against injustice. And of course, it becomes imbalanced when there's an excess or suppression of that motion that needs to move. And we'll slowly start to change this shape into our twist variation. So if you had your blanket roll, I'm just going to make a small adjustment by having it now come a head support. And I'll slide the right hand under, so for a moment I'm kind of on my right side, and I can again make a new fresh decision from here. Decision making is the gallbladder function. So here, fresh decision. Do I just maybe stretch that left arm out to the left and that's my shape, or do I add that bending of the left knee? No, that's your right knee. And bringing the heel closer to bum, and then starting to experiment, maybe rocking towards the back, maybe staying more on your side. It's not about the shape. You've probably heard me say that hundreds of times, but it's come to your sensations. Don't worry about like, am I doing it correctly or not? Where is my foot supposed to be? Where is my knee supposed to be? And can you feel what's happening in the body? If it feels that too much is going on, how can I simplify? Can be a really useful practice to know when to simplify, when to do less. And then again, let's stay here. And really the main lines that I wanted to share, I'll share them in a different shape, but they come from Audre Lorde, who was a civil rights activist and was really fighting against racism, sexism, classism, homophobia. And there's a really nice quote from her on anger. Often the root of anger, it is pain or some sort of sorrow. And the best antidote against it is, or towards it, is compassion. And where inquiry really can be when it arises is what part in us is hurting, what is it trying to protect. Let's give our twist a couple of more breaths. And slowly, as we begin to release this one, if you have that back leg, start to let it go. And instead of rolling back onto your belly, start to turn onto your back. So when you straighten your right leg, just starting to pivot and shuffle over onto your back. You could keep your blanket under your head if it feels nice. If you don't need it, you don't have to have it there. And we'll take a rebound here. We'll let the legs flop or feet on the ground. And we'll take a minute or so on the back. And I'll read you that quote as you settle, as you let the body drop. There is a lot of data in anger. And that data is there to help us learn from it. Anger is teaching us how to be free, how to live dynamic and rich lives, cultivating, embracing and expressing our self-agency, setting boundaries, and reducing the harm we experience as individuals and collectives. To allow anger to do this, we have to love it. And in loving it, let it show us what it really is. In loving it, it shows us where it hurts. So give it another breath here. And then now is the time to reach for your strap or whatever you're using as a strap. So we'll take the right foot up first. And my blanket, actually, I'm going to have it ready on my right side. So I'm losing my head support because I just have one blanket. And it's going to be rolled up. And it's going to be ready on the right side for that leg to kind of be supported there. But at first, I'll hold the strap on the right hand, in the right hand, and I'll start to move the leg. So hopefully you have space for this. If you don't, I'll give you an alternative. If you have space for that, move that right leg out to the right so it's looped into a strap, and then across the body over to the left. You could keep your left foot on the mat, or you could slide your left leg straight. If you don't have space for that, so Philip and Helene, maybe you're very close together there, you could take the sole of your right foot onto the mat, left leg is straight, and just let the knee drop from side to side. You get similar stimulation, inner thigh, outer thigh. So remember the liver line on the inner thigh, gallbladder on the outer thigh. Those who have space, you could have the left leg be straight, and you could let your hips kind of also swing. So as the right leg goes to the right, you could let your left bum come off the mat, so the pelvis tilts as well. And then as the right foot goes to the left across the body, you could also let it come closer to the ground, kind of coming more towards a twist. So again, how big do you want to make it? How much movement is necessary right now? So a few options here. Again, it might bigger movement and also smaller movement in a similar way can help to, they just help to release in different ways. So it doesn't necessarily have to be big in order for it to work. And so I'll go a couple of times. And then I'm gonna let, I have space, so I'm gonna keep the leg straight. I'm gonna slide the blanket roll under that thigh quite high up. So I'm gonna have the leg stay out to the right, and my blanket roll is supporting the thigh quite high up towards the hip. And I'll hold on to the strap, and I can have the right elbow on the ground. Again, if you don't have space for that, your foot is on the ground. We did it last week as well. And you can just have the knee drop out to the side and have your blanket roll still supporting the thigh. Both of those will get to the inner thigh. So you can choose which one works with your environment is and which one works for your inner environment. And we'll give it again a moment here to soften through the shoulders and to relax through the jaw. As again, the main kind of area that we're targeting is along the inner thigh. Can my attention also travel there and hold space there? And I'm listening in. Let's give it another 3 breaths. Definitely have that thigh supported. And then if your left leg is straight, just slide it onto the mat. Bring the right leg back and release the strap and just set the foot onto the mat for a moment. We'll continue on that right side. I'll slide the blanket roll a little bit higher up out of the way. And then I'll bring the right foot, and either you can take hold of it with one hand or both hands. If it is at all possible, I'm interlocking my kind of fingers around that little toe side of the right foot. My left foot is on the ground. And I'll start to, like slow motion, also start to move that heel, right heel, a little bit over to the left, a little bit over to the right, and I'm not pushing anything, a little bit higher up, but slow motion. So I used to practice this, and I kind of used to move that heel around, and so what it generates is movement in your hip socket. And then when I was practicing today, I was doing it super slow, like really slow motion. And if you've got the foot, it's easy. If you can't hold on to the foot, you could be holding on to your ankle. But if you've got the foot and it's easy, for example, my right thumb is really easily now fitting into that groove of the thumb, your big toe and second toe. We used it also last week. There's an acupressure point for liver there. So I'm showing it now. It's in that groove between the big toe and second toe and sliding down a little bit. There's liver 2 and liver 3. And again, it's a tender point at the top of the foot. Again, helping with tension, resentment, stress. So it's an ideal one, I've found out today, to kind of hold that here as I also stir things up in my hip. I'm bringing that heel, and as if I want to straighten that knee, I'm not forcing it all the way straight, and then bending that knee so that that foot is moving, but there's sensations in the hip, in the outer thigh. It's just a couple of 3 or 4 more breaths. Now, letting go of that acupressure point if you have it, if you had that thumb on that groove. So what I'm going to do is, in my transition, I'm going to keep holding on to that right foot. Springtime seems to bring weird transitions also, but you could let it go and roll to your right side. We're going to end up in a deer pose. So the way it looks like is I'm going to start to roll to the right, and then I'll push myself just a little bit off the ground so that I'm going to turn around, but I'm really encouraging you to stay where you are. It's not, you don't have to get it perfect. Trust it. So I've rolled to my side. I've pushed myself up. So I'm kind of on that right outer hip. I'm going to play with where exactly that left knee is going to go, where exactly that right heel is going to go. And I can also angle my torso a little bit over towards the right knee, or a little bit over towards the left foot. This could essentially also be a pigeon pose if the left leg, if you send it all the way back behind you. See if that transition made sense in your body. Or if it was confusing, then pardon me. I see Ellen eyes completely up. So the transition looked like this. You roll to the side and you have arrived. So I think on the second side, you'll trust me. And it'll make sense why we moved from here to there to there. And then we'll pause here. So it's a little bit, when building this sequence, it was really like, right now in these times, I feel that I can't make any like really long plans. I can just see kind of like what's the best next step, and move towards it. And it was kind of like within this sequence. I'm in the posture and I'm sensing, okay, so where would this posture move on to next? And sometimes those transitions, moving on to the next things, are wonky. But maybe when we look back, or when we get to make a similar choice somewhere down the line, down the track, it'll make more sense. Maybe I'm reaching for metaphors here. Let's bring the attention down in the lower centers in the body. Now give it another breath or two. And then let's see if we can kind of backtrack and roll kind of. So I'm going to curl that left hand is on the ground, right hand threads under, and then I'll roll from side and onto the back. And then we'll take a moment on the back and rebound, whatever way that feels comfortable for you to let go, to either be still or include a little bit of movement, whatever settles you most easily. Sensing that right side. Around the hip, we did some work with movement and holding. And then let's explore the same on the other side and see if there is a better flow now that we've gotten a little bit of a glimpse. So we can take that left foot either. So again, if you didn't have space, then you actually don't need a strap. Then your right leg stays straight, left foot comes on the mat, and it's the knee that's going to drop out to the left and then inward to the right. So it could be like this if you don't have space in and around you. Or you can take the leg straight and into a strap and start to either just, I would start with smaller movement, so just the leg moving from side to side, so it comes across the body to the right. You might even change the strap to your right hand. You could do this also with right foot on the mat as a little balancer. The right knee could drop a little bit to the right when the left leg goes to the left. Right knee could drop towards the midline, cross the midline when the left leg goes to the right. And then there is an option to swing a bit more. For that, the right leg would have to be straight, and so that you let that kind of the pelvis also move. So when the left leg goes to the left, my right bum comes off the mat, and when the leg comes across the body, I'll take it into a twist. I'm finding ease again in whatever I choose, and just the amount of challenge that I have capacity for. I try to recognize that sweet spot, that juicy spot. And just kind of train that mentality. And then next time when the leg is up, if you have your blanket roll handy, to be placed under that left thigh, somewhere. I'm having it quite high up, so the leg comes out to the side and feels supported. So I don't have to use too much musculature to hold that leg out to the side. I'm again showing the alternative is the foot is on the mat and the knee is dropping out, kind of like a half butterfly, but still having a support under that thigh to hold the weight, to hold the bones, and then letting the knee, letting everything settle for a moment to tend to the structures now in our yin way of holding and pausing and feeling and softening. Wood element talks about or represents ideally this good balance of strength and flexibility. So resilience in that a sense that able to adapt to change course. So to have a direction, to have a vision, but also to be then able to adjust, adapt, make corrections. So small ways in our practice, we can also notice to take what I read before. So one of your parts of your agency is also the agency over your body and the decisions, even the small ones that you take here, to make changes when needed. To learn to really listen and trust your inner sense. And then let's slide the right foot onto the mat if it's not there already, and bring the left foot onto the mat as well, just for a moment to release that inner thigh stretch. And if whatever you had under that hip, just push it a little bit away, higher up, so that you have space to your left for our tricky transition. But first we're going to bring that left foot, and either you hold on to it with just your right hand or with right and left hand. So I like to kind of interlock my fingers and then thread them around the little toe side of the foot. Again, the groove, if you want to add that liver acupressure point, if you have tension or stress, oh god, that even, yeah, then maybe you want to press that point. Kind of, yeah. You'll feel it. It's tender, I promise. And the slow motion of that heel moving. So kind of like as if I want to straighten that knee, that the toes move kind of upward towards my head and down a few times, but slower than you would think. At least in my body, it's like I need to go slower, and then it got juicier. And you could also try trajectories where that foot travels a little bit over to the right side or downwards. So you're kind of caging and feeling sensations that arise as you make little coarse changes in the way your foot travels. Little changes feel different. And then letting that liver point go if you did include that. Please feel free to make any other type of a transition. So you could roll onto your left side without needing to hold onto the foot. It might not work for your body. For me, it feels kind of nice, playful way to kind of keep hold of that foot as I roll and as I press a little bit down onto the ground, and then I'm already there. I'm already in the shape. I didn't have to make much alternations, but it might be that it didn't quite work again on this side. This is the shape that you'll end up with. Left knee is out to the left, right knee is pointing forward, heel is in. I see a lot of confused faces, so maybe I'll need to make some course changes in that sequence. It's our deer pose, something that I include a lot, but we can arrive into places from different angles. And then let yourself settle. I wanted to share one more poem with you that kind of fit with the theme. You don't need to be big. You don't need to be loud. You don't need to shake the world and yell from the rooftops to alter the path and move things. You simply have to listen, step forward, and do. Over and over again, you listen, step forward, and do. Humbly, knowingly, truthfully. So that's what we've been doing here. We've simply listened. We've stepped into a shape. You've made changes if you need to. One step at a time. Let yourself again slowly find your way back onto your back, and you make it smooth. Can you be kind of interested for a moment? How can a transition unravel as a continuation of where you are and not an abrupt ending, so that it can smoothly kind of take you and release you and drop you to gravity for a moment. Feeling that left side hip. You listen, you step forward, you do. Humbly, knowingly, truthfully. And then bring your knees in, let yourself maybe rock on the back, roll to one side. This time very simply rolling up to your seat. And I want to add just one more thing before we come into Shavasana. So I'm going to take my legs wide and open, and we'll do a little bit of kind of upper body movement here. If this doesn't quite work, you could also sit cross-legged. So however you can kind of tend to the upper body a little bit and to the sides of the body, because we haven't moved that much. And I'll take my right hand on top first into kind of these hugging arms, holding to the backs of the shoulders. And I'll lean over to the left, so kind of laterally first. And then I'll let that top shoulder, right shoulder, could kind of curl down towards the ground, and then curl up towards the ceiling again. So that there's a little bit of, and what I'm feeling is like this whole rib basket here is kind of turning and unturning. And I'm going to try to be as soft, right hand on top, as soft with this as possible. My head slowly kind of follows along a little bit, and you don't have to be kind of dropped very deep at all. Just go couple of more times. Again, just letting this area, this side body area, this back of the shoulder blade area move. And then next time when you kind of in that lateral stretch and you've curled that right shoulder down towards the ground, then circle slowly over to the opposite side. And then stay here and let yourself let that left shoulder turn down and up, and you might change that left hand on top, although it doesn't really matter that much. And so I'll let that left shoulder drop towards, or you could even think of elbows moving kind of away from the thigh and towards the thigh. And then I'll do one more time. So next time when I'm down towards that thigh, I'll do one more of these circuits over to the other. And now you could move a couple of times from side to side. And then next time you, or whichever side you are, you're going to come up, you're going to release the hands, and then just for a minute coming forward. So if you were cross-legged, you could come forward into a cross-legged seat. You could also be in butterfly. So you could, if this one is not working for your body, it's too intense, take a butterfly. But let's take a forward fold and letting that back body now open. If you're in the dragonfly with the legs straight, just letting your legs flop. And take some breaths to the back of the lungs. Soft belly. Maybe head supported on something for a moment. You could stay longer. We're coming to towards the end of the session, so the next shape would be a relaxation on the back. So if you're enjoying where you're at and you have the time, you could definitely stay longer. If you're starting to release, just making sure again that you kind of help yourself slowly out and then onto your back for your shavasana. If you have your blanket that could cover you, or if it's a heavier blanket, that could be a weight across your belly, or it could be a pillow under your head. So wherever you need that support the most, that's where you'll use it. Also, I'm going to hold space here for about 5 minutes, but similarly, if you want to take a longer, more luscious shavasana, consider maybe silencing me so I don't distract you when we end. And as always, the shavasana doesn't really need to be on the back. You could be on your side, you could be on the belly. So once more, this listening or sensing what works right now. Where do you feel your kind of yes and your comfort? You don't need to be big, you don't need to be loud, and you don't need to shake the world and yell from the rooftops to alter the path and move things. You simply have to listen, step forward, and do over and over again. Listen, step forward, and do. Humbly, knowingly, truthfully. As you hear my voice coming in, check in one more time. Do you want to move already, or do you want to stay as you are? And if you're bringing a transition in, can you make that really kind of smooth, continuous, unrushed? Maybe curling to one side and pausing there before coming up to seated. And if you are landing in your seat, then let's take a little pause. We've gone just a bit over time. So we just take a moment to notice. What's in the foreground? Or maybe something that is present now that wasn't before. Or something is absent now that was here before. In our own little laboratory, we notice what changes, what shifts. Feel free to add a gesture here, any type of gesture, as a little seal to your practice. So I'll today take the palms together and have a little bow, head bowing towards the heart, in front of the heart. Thank you so much for joining.